2:09, yes, 2:09 p.m. And of course, we don't need to read the statement as we understand it because it can be included in the minutes regarding virtual meetings. Hello for those who are online, Zooming, off via phone. We do need to do a roll call so we can ascertain who is a part of this meeting. Let's do a roll call, shall we?
They agree to the electronic.
Yeah, they have to. They don't have no choice.
By saying aye, they agree to the electronic meeting.
Yeah, they got to.
They've already.
They don't like it, too bad. Oh, no nonsense guy.
Well,
Okay, go for it. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Holland,
Yes, aye.
Ms. O'Bannon,
aye.
Ms. Page,
Present.
Got it. Good.
Mr.
And we're
Peterson,
here.
And then we do have Mark Rhodes, our auditor from Dun & Ocamp and Rhodes, on the Zoom as well.
Good. Please note. All right, wonderful. That's it? That's all of us? Okay,
yes.
good. All right, in regards to the minutes, meeting minutes from September 22nd, any questions regarding page 3 minutes? Anyone has any corrections, updates? Hearing none, we would like to motion to approve the minutes as printed.
I move to approve them as printed.
Okay, move and second. It's been properly moved and second. The minutes are adopted. Motion carries. Thank you very much. New business, item 2, audit report. Terry, would you like, are you starting the audit report?
Well, Mr. Rhodes is going to start the audit report.
Okay,
Did you get
okay,
the
would you
one?
let-
got the-
Mention who he is, if you would, so we'll know. Mr. Rose, for those who don't know, has been a long-term auditor for the Richmond Regional Planning District Commission. And I know you, Mr. Rose, as a fellow CPA in the wonderful state of Virginia. And you're Chantilly, I'm Richmond. So welcome. Always good to have CPAs. I love CPAs. I shouldn't be so biased, but I do.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I think it might be easier if you allow me to share my screen and I can just go through the audit that way. Will that work or?
It's your pleasure.
Yeah, that'd be great. Diane
Thank
will
you. Your
give you
pleasure.
that permission.
Yeah, good deal. It makes sense to me. If y'all need to move up, see better, feel free to touch the screen. I think I'll be, my eyesight. You don't mind if I move
No.
here?
Yeah,
Either one?
either one is fine.
Either one's fine with you? Okay.
Oh,
By the way,
The camera doesn't pick up.
oh, let me
this
get back. Let me
as
get
well,
back. Let me get back.
but
I
you're
get back.
welcome.
By the way, too, I just shared with y'all while we're waiting. I got tested yesterday for COVID. I'm negative. I'm negative.
Thank
I
you.
just got tested. Just want to let y'all know. Now you made symptomatic. I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know.
Okay, Mark, we can see it. Thank you.
And my wife too.
If it's possible to Zoom though, it would be helpful.
You
to
could
see the-
enlarge. Yeah,
These are the same
enlarge it.
pages
Yeah,
we had.
it's a lot better. Yeah, that's a little bit better.
Yes, the hard copy is what
We
he has
have
on
this
screen.
in front of
Hey, yeah, we can follow that. You just go and point out where you are. We can follow you, Mr. Camp. Just point out where you are.
Okay. So I'm just going straight to the auditor's report on page 1.
Page 1.
And yes. Now this is the standard unmodified audit report.
Good news.
It's a clean audit opinion. There were no material findings or material weaknesses that were noted.
Great.
There was a mistake that was noted during our testing that we'll make a comment and a letter to the board about that. As far as the really it was just the procedure. It wasn't a mistake in the recording of the transaction. There was a procedural there was a procedure that wasn't followed where somebody went in to correct a time card but did not notify accounting that the correction had been made. And so it's more of a what it could have potentially have been, but the transaction itself did not appear to be wrong, any errors in the recording of the information. So it's not a material weakness that would cause a finding with the single audit. So that's why it's still a clean opinion on the financial. Okay. As you move through, which I don't know that I have the most recent copy of the management discussion analysis, but this would generally be where they would go through the ins and outs of the year in a narrative that a little bit more informative than just looking at the financial statements themselves.
I'm having a hard time understanding is something wrong with the sound system here, or is that just me?
It's a little muffled.
It's muffled, but I'm making them out.
Yeah, it just points out. If you point out the page and paragraph, we can follow you, but please say it very distinctly.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm on page 4 of the financial
Better.
statements.
Better.
So the management discussion and analysis, which goes through the ins and outs for the year. On page, tracking through to page 7, that compares the assets, liabilities for the 2 years, showing that the assets had increased as well as some of the liabilities, more or less timing issues. And then moving on, the statement of activity is a summarized version of the revenue and expenses. And then the revenue expenses broken out as they show for the fund balance calculation are on page 9. So this gives the comparison from last year to this year, which is not what you'll see in the financial statements themselves. Moving through, let's see. Again, so now on page 11, we're just showing the same thing in more detail as far as the balance sheet, the statement of financial position. So you can see what made up those amounts on the in the management discussion and analysis report. And then here's a breakdown of the just a summary of the government activities and expenses and general revenue and expenses. And what you'll notice is basically under operations, for lack of a better term, you'll see general revenues and expenses here on page 12. That shows these on page 12.
Thank you.
That shows the special assessment that was made to the jurisdictions. And it also shows the GASB, well, that should say GASB 68. That needs to be corrected right there.
Okay.
That shows the GASB 68 adjustment for the VRS, which is not an operating adjustment. It's just the actuaries identifying what they think the liability or is at that moment in time, which is usually a year behind.
Okay.
Then moving on, you have your fund balance, which shows that based on the operations, the fund balance is actually over $1 million now. And you get from your fund balance to your net position from the statement of a financial position, that's the ins and outs below as far as the different transactions that are identified in accrual accounting versus the government-based accounting to get down to the net position of 692 versus the fund balance of $1 million.
I've got a question here, Richard.
Yes,
Not being an accountant, but I'm sitting here, all this stuff is saying our net position at the end of the year was 692,748. Yet we supposedly have over $1 million in funds, unrestricted funds. How can our net worth be, our net position be less than that?
because with the government accounting, you have certain liabilities that are recorded, like a $584,000 net pension liability. I'm sorry, that is accounted, sorry, not in the accrual accounting. So that's the biggest chunk right there.
Gotcha.
That's going to wipe
Okay.
out the million.
Okay,
On page 11, he's looking at 584,000 net pension liability.
okay, but my question now, this is to the committee here. But our requirement for the $1 million, is that the purpose of the $1 million for that to cover that liability, or is it for other things?
The whole point of it was if we had to just shut down. So I'm assuming it doesn't, whatever it takes to
I'm
close.
trying to comprehend.
Yeah, to cover all debt,
I
all
know
debt,
that.
current and future.
The biggest one that I recall though was even more, I think it was more than 584,000. Was you had to pay the total rent between the date we closed and the date that the rent last day we were, our contract said. So that obviously can get smaller.
Get smaller, yes.
But it included that and any other liabilities that we would have to close out or pay at the time that you dissolve the organization.
Yeah.
Or, probably.
That's right. That's exactly right, Pat. Yeah,
I don't remember everything.
okay. Yeah,
Always
It's the
change
non-current liabilities, right, that can be considered as part of that,
yeah.
I agree with you that if we had a list of what would have to happen in order to close down, that's obviously.
Okay.
If we
Okay.
start talking about things. Why would we have to shut down or close down?
That's my first bit of education here.
Okay, good deal. And where are we now, right now, please?
Page
You would-
13.
13? Okay, 13, thank you. I jumped over, I had already jumped over. Anything else on the balance sheet of note?
No. No, that was the big adjustment there as far as seeing the difference between fund balance and the net position.
Now, on page 14, I see you do have GASB 6-8 adjustment, so that probably should be consistent with the front page that you mentioned earlier.
Right. I need to add that into the.
Yeah, it's added on page 14, GASB 6-8 adjustment, which is,
Yes.
this page $28,000.
42.
42? Oh, you don't have pension expense. Oh, you got, I see, it's a heading. Pension expense, okay. Be nice to have a colon after that. Will be after pension expense, you have a colon, which will indicate note what follows. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I apologize for that.
Thank you, yeah. Otherwise, I'm looking for a line item. I see none. On the financial, page
Right.
14. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Change the indentation a bit.
Yeah, or indentation, however you do it, bold or indentation.
Right.
But make sure it note what follows.
Okay. So, and then you get into the footnotes, which I'm not going to stop at every single footnote. That's a breakdown on page 18, a breakdown of the what makes up your accounts receivable balance. So you see where the money's coming from, and a breakdown of the activity in the property equipment. And then you start your multiple page footnote for the VRS, which I'm going to fast forward through here to page 33. Right. So when you're talking about long-term liabilities, one of the things that they're talking about bringing up, but they've delayed the implementation, is requiring something like on page 33, your long-term obligation, your total lease payment, showing that as a liability and basically an asset on your balance sheet so that you can see what the liability is instead of having it back here in the board minutes. So if you're locked in and you have to pay all that to the very end, then that tells you what your liabilities are for until the 2023. And
Where's the GASP 68 footnote? Is there a GASP 68 footnote?
I think it's note 5.
No.
It's the multiple pages of note 5
Retirements,
are the required,
No
they're not
five
new
retirement
anymore.
plan.
Those are the retirement plan footnotes
Okay,
that were implemented a few years ago.
okay.
yeah, that takes you through all the adjustments that were incurred from page, whatever
Yeah,
it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
starts on
Okay.
page 19, ends on page 31.
I see it on page 37 as well. 27, sorry, 27.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to see it, that's footnoted. That explains it.
I do, and then on the indirect rates here, I think I need to touch base with Terry just to make sure that I have that amount properly identified, because I think there was some an account that I'm including in direct expense that that might be wrong.
Okay, page 30, page 34?
Page 34.
Good,
Yeah,
good, yeah.
page 34.
Yeah, double check that. Last year we had a question there.
I mean, I think the format that we're using will help Terry with the VDOT questions in the future, but I just want to make sure we have it right. So
What's the second line there? Because this is completely covered up with draft on my page.
Rent, you mean salaries and fringe in the indirect
Next line,
process?
but next line after that, I can.
Rent,
Rent.
yeah, the 231,000.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Good.
the whole of our rent is included as an indirect cost.
Good, good.
and that's net of your sublease.
Right.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, I'm sorry to be bouncing. Go ahead.
If our lease ends in October 2022, why do we have 2023 items in here?
Fiscal year 2023 is October of 2022. So yeah, the list in note 7, the list of the years, it's years ending June 30th, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So the October 2022 is the
From June to
fiscal year.
October is 2023.
Yeah.
considered. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
so that 99,000 is just the July, August, September, and prorated October rent for that year.
Okay. Page 35 shows the fringe benefit calculation for this year. And then on to page 36, these are the federal funds that were expended during the year in the various programs. Footnote for those items. And then on page 38, this is the report on internal controls for compliance. And this is a standard unmodified report. Like I said, there was no deficiencies found in compliance, so there's nothing to be reported here.
okay.
Moving on to page 40 is the report on compliance with major programs. Also a unmodified standard report. So a clean report also. And then this just summarizes that there were no material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, or non-compliance items noted. And it's an unmodified opinion. And there were no prior findings, so there's nothing to follow up on.
Great, great.
And then the final two, this schedule is showing your budget comparison to actual based on a fund balance. And then at the bottom, it takes it back to the statement of activity, change in that position amount. And then this is just showing your history of the pension liability. This is eventually going to be a 10-page, or not 10-page, a 10-year chart. So it showed the full 10 years. Same thing here. This is showing the employer's contributions over time. And then just footnotes for that, for those disclosures.
Okay.
So that was pretty quick and dirty. I don't know if somebody wants to go back to anywhere in particular and has any questions or changes.
Just one quick question. On page 35, the fringe benefit expense total labor is 47.35. How does that compare to prior year?
It's an increase.
It's an increase of approximately
4.28%.
4.28, okay, percent, okay. Okay, thank you. Got it, okay. All right, and you're gonna make those corrections, adjustments as you noted.
Yes, sir.
Great, great. Any other questions or comments?
Mark,
Anyone?
do you plan to be in attendance for presentation of the audit at the November 12th board meeting?
I can be.
Would you?
We think you should, yeah. We
That's
want
fine.
you here.
Can you do Zoom, or do you want him here physically?
Well,
Well, the board
What do
will
you
be
think,
meeting
Matt?
by Zoom, so
Okay.
I think it'd be fine for Mark to be by Zoom too.
Yeah, we're not gonna have a meeting here, are we?
It'll be on virtual.
Yeah.
so he should be virtual.
Yeah, that
Be
would be
consistent.
fine.
Okay,
He
great.
doesn't have to wake up as early to drive down here.
Okay, good, good. You,
So we'll have, Mark Rhodes will be in attendance at the 9 o'clock meeting on November 12th. And if the committee is comfortable, we can have a motion from this committee for acceptance of the audit, or we can just forward it to schedule it for the board meeting on November 12th without a recommendation. It's your pleasure.
I think we should offer a recommendation, and I think we should accept the report with all corrections. If you find anything else, let us know before. What do you think?
I'm all in favor of that, but what I have not heard from our auditor
Yes, sir.
is his opinion that everything is fine,
Yeah,
or if there's anything that we need to be addressing.
No.
And
Okay,
I would
good. That's
like to
a good
hear
question.
those, if you could address anything you found that would suggest we need to look at something a little
Good point.
closer.
Good point. Okay,
So I'm asking that question now.
Do you want us to leave the room?
Usually that's what happens.
Probably should.
okay, good point, good point. Okay, don't go far.
I will say this, that one time we had allocated a big bonus to the director.
Mhm.
He said, he pointed it out, he said, did you guys do this?
Oh,
It was, yes, we did.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
We
I didn't know
we
that. Okay, thank you. The room is clear now. Thank you for Mr. Peterson's question.
Yeah.
Any comments you want to make now, you're free without staff.
Okay, that's fine. No, the question or the issue that was raised, as I was saying earlier, the only item that we found that that I'm saying that you need to work on would be the making sure that there are controls to make. I mean, there appeared to have been controls in place when somebody went in to change their hours on their timesheet. Because based on the emails that I read, the individual indicated that that the system had been locked, which is standard, that once the timesheets are done, they lock them and give it like a day for the supervisors to then review it, and then another day, and then it's processed.
Hold on a second.
I'm just gonna stop the recording. Sorry.
Oh,
Oh. We've already done
Harry, page 47.
All right, so we have, on page 47, we have the balance sheet.
Year to date.
I'm sorry, year-to-date balance sheet as
Thank
of
you.
September 30th.
Mhm.
And again, we have a strong cash position of $935,841. The unrestricted reserve balance,
Mhm.
unadjusted for the fiscal year 20 audit at September 30th is $1,098,818.
Okay.
Are there any questions about page 47, the year-to-date balance sheet?
I don't have any.
On page 49, we have the quarter profit and loss statement through September 20.
Mhm.
For the month of September, we have a net loss for $12,411.
I apologize.
What page are you on?
Yeah.
Page 50,
I'm missing 50 over here, 51. I'm missing page 50.
Sorry, figures are really little.
Yeah, I can't see page 50. Page 50 is missing here. Let me see if I can find another.
Just basic questions are, you got a net loss year to date. What are?
I got 50.
okay.
But, and I know you've got the same year. Everybody is not bringing in what they used to bring in. So when you say cash, that's correct. I'm just trying to follow.
Mhm.
How are we doing with, I guess, budget?
I do have concerns that we are continuing to move
Yeah, well,
for
it's,
three months in a row now,
Mhm.
that, and taking my non-CPA hat and looking at this thing, you know, we either have to increase our revenues or reduce our expenses.
that's,
I mean, it's that simple.
yeah,
And what are we doing to stop this bleeding?
I'd like to add that in our fiscal year 20 audit, there was an error that was found. The portion of the fiscal year 19 Lower Chickahominy grant that was remaining was not for salaried interns use. It was for a contract with UVA to provide services. So when I had recognized revenue in July and August, that was not correct. So I had to back off that revenue. So that has attributed to some of this loss. Now, I did pick up income in October for $2,600 on the Lower Chickahominy grant because we finalized the fiscal year 20 audit. We were doing some reconciling for the revenues on the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, and that's when we discovered that we were short the $2,600 on that program. As I explained to Mr. Holland yesterday, we just didn't have, to date, we still don't have enough money programmed for that program that's getting ready to end. So that bleeding will stop. We just required a lot more, labor in that grant than we anticipated. There's plenty of labor in the other environmental grants that start up, but we can't recoup and put any of these losses into this Lower Chickahominy grant. So from that standpoint, we would definitely be, stopping losses from that regard.
So you're saying that we actually complained that we did better last year than we really did because we recognized this year's income last year. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That is correct.
So last year we overstated.
She found a correction
Yes,
that impacted this year favorably.
yes.
Yes, that's what she said.
But I mean, we believe that the losses, I mean, of what we can control, I mean, as Martha had made a good point
Mhm.
yesterday, we have many holidays coming up for our staff members.
Mhm.
And we have several projects that are revving up to start.
Mhm.
So we'll see, more revenue with the expenses offset.
So it should be turning around, in other words, what she's saying.
I
In a
believe
couple of
so.
months, it'll be turning around.
We believe so.
So it's not a continuing loss situation. That's the
Right.
good
Well,
news.
Right.
And that-
That's
that's
what
what
I that, but we've got a quarter of the year gone already.
Yeah, we got a quarter gone. That's
Yeah,
true.
well,
That
Year
is
to
still
date.
a red flag.
So it should turn around by the fourth quarter. No, second quarter, I'm sorry. Second quarter is October to December. We're in
Well,
October now,
I would like to add,
so it should turn around then.
that Martha has brought to light a really important issue in regards to these monthly financial statements, and we have various programs that are local only.
Mhm.
And we're using an allocation method. We're taking 1/12 of our general assembly money, 1/12 of our local annual assessment monies,
Mhm.
and we're spreading those just across all 12 months, just evenly. We're not really using a matching revenue and expense type of concept.
Mhm.
Now, I am going to put together a worksheet
Mhm.
so that we can provide a better explanation in the future. And we can go back and we can speak to the first quarter and explain what really is the true loss
Mhm.
based on the methodology that we're using.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because we do feel that we're doing a lot of local only work.
Mhm.
But the way that we're allocating, we're not allocating enough to cover those.
Okay, it's the
Those
allocation
costs.
method that primarily
Yes.
contributes to us. Allocation method is
Yes.
primarily contributing.
Yes.
All work is being done for the Richmond Planning District. It is being paid for through our local jurisdictions, contributions, and state contributions.
That is correct.
Right. So the grants that we get are for work that really doesn't necessarily have to apply directly to our planning district, but could indirectly, correct? And we get paid by somebody else to do those. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. How many staff do we have?
25.
25? Of those 25, how many are creating billable hours outside of our local things? And how many are on board staff?
I don't have that figure, but I can follow up with you to give you the breakdown.
Because, my concern, I'm looking at this thing and, if, and I don't know what percentage these folks who are doing these grants will, I mean, obviously they're not, 100% of their time is not billable. It's not my business. I can't bill 100% of the time.
Well,
I wish I could.
what we know is that the delta of 55% chargeable reimbursement for positions, that's what we know, the average delta is 55% through September. For charging back programs for reimbursement.
Let me just ask this, you have in the notes here that the year-to-date
Mhm.
loss is $42,093. 42,000
That's correct.
That's
what
for the
she's
quarter.
reporting.
this quarter.
Yeah, right.
And I noticed that you have, what was it? Travel is travel for the board is, it says annual budget $3,500, which you've eliminated. Travel by people in the agency, I guess, I'm having a hard time, there's 32,000. Books and periodicals, and I'm not sure. In other words, how are y'all managing to eliminate some expenses? Would that be, that's a fair question to ask another one. What are you doing to eliminate some of it? Because he was asking about salaried employees. I hate to dump employees.
Yeah.
Well,
What are you doing to?
I mean, I would like to say that we turned in our postage meter. I mean, we don't really use a lot of postage these days. We use our website to provide information. We turned off the paper, the newspaper that was coming to the agency every day, and now we just have an electronic version. We turned in the coffee machine, which was probably between $150 and $200 a month cost. Would you like to add anything, Martha?
Oh,
I'm just-
Yeah, we won't-
I'll just
I'm not-
simply say, we're looking at every single expense
I think we
line
can, yeah.
for
That's
for
what I'd
reduction
like
in
to hear.
expenses. I
That's
mean,
Yeah.
I will tell you, Mr.
Okay.
Peterson, you are correct. The only way to correct the situation is to increase revenue or decrease expenses.
Yeah.
The likelihood of increasing revenue is not great, given the conditions that we are experiencing, and so it is largely going to be through
I know
reducing
it's not a good
expenses.
time. with
No, it's the right
pandemic, what
question.
have you, but it's still not an option. We can't just. keep
Understood.
this way.
Can't keep
Right,
losing.
okay.
Yeah, can't keep leaving.
Yeah, I agree. Good points. Let's look at these footnotes. Let's run through these quickly here. Now, one question is salaries of roughly $7,000 CBTA. So we've incurred the expense, we recorded the accrued expense, but we haven't gotten the revenue from that yet, have we? Have they paid for it?
We have recorded
The
the
expense,
fringe, the indirects, and the
Yeah.
10% administrative fee.
but you haven't
And
got
you'll see
reimbursed.
that in revenue.
When do we get the revenue?
When CBDA,
We've
that's
recorded the
why-
revenue, even though there is an MOU in the works between PRVA and CBTA.
So we're not looking at the cash basis, we got accrual basis.
We've got accrual basis.
We've
Accrual basis, so you recorded accrual.
Yes.
We've already-
Yes.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. I got
CBDA.
I got you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and also, program expenses are 21% below expectation. Income is under budget by 8%.
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
just to ask a point of clarification to Terry. Terry, I think we've talked about this already. On the revenue section of the profit and loss statement, on page 49, if you look at row 4315, under local funding, service/fee income,
Right.
that $29,614 that's been recorded as revenue for September, that is the due from CBTA for staff and personnel expenses. Am I
Gotcha.
correct?
That is
Gotcha.
correct.
However, when you go up to the page just prior to that, on the balance sheet, and you look at item 1300 on the balance sheet,
Due
due
from.
from
Gotcha.
CBTA,
Gotcha.
Terry has recorded the revenue to cover the personnel costs associated with supporting CBTA,
Thank you.
but not the direct expenses that we've incurred.
Right,
So the
those,
delta between the 20,000 on the revenue,
Mhm.
on the profit and loss, and the 52 due from,
Yes. Good.
that differential are our direct expenses that we've incurred year to date for the CBTA. So
Gotcha.
there is a variance. There.
That would affect the-
Absolutely, it would affect the
Cash
profit,
that-
absolutely.
yes,
If-
sir.
But it wouldn't affect the profit and loss though.
That's
That's
right.
correct.
It's affecting
That was the
cash.
intention.
It's cash basis, that's right.
Right,
It's
not to
That's not cash. Yeah,
combine.
You're right.
Right.
You're right. Okay, very good. Thank you much. I gotta run at this 3. Briefly, we need to start early on our meetings, maybe 1:30. 1:30. Maybe start early because I got a 3:30 commitment I have to get to. But anyway, let me know how the remainder of this meeting goes, if you would. Clock me out and I'll be in touch. All right?
Thank you.
Gotta go, I'm sorry. I apologize, but schedule demands.
That's great.
Not on this part. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the.
We got budget amendments to do.
Right,
And then you
we
want to do
are,
the 22 budget.
I think they do apply though, because I know the thing we talked about here is adding people and a new accounting system.
Right.
And I'm having a hard time thinking in terms of doing either one unless we can show how it is gonna increase revenues or
Reduce expenses.
reduce expenses.
Okay.
And,
I
I
hear you.
mean, we can't do them at some point in time, but I have a hard
I
time
hear.
recommending any such action when we're showing negative figures.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, I
And also,
understand.
make sure we have on the next financial report, the head count numbers, the head count sheet we talked about before.
So I'm
Have
gonna
that
want
too.
to get that
You're
out.
right.
for you.
I appreciate it. I heard
That's-
I appreciate it, I hear you. Thank y'all, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'll catch up with y'all, feel free to talk.
We'll talk about you later.
Thank you, sir, I appreciate it. Now, yes.
So-
Well, let's turn it back over to Martha.
We would like to add on line item 7223 on the broadband network telephone. We were working on an adjustment with the vendor, and we have obtained an adjustment for $1,128. That is to be settled by the end of this month.
Is that in here in this document, please?
It is on page
Can you reduce the
50,
cost and
page 50.
reduce the cost? It's taken me a month, but it's.
It has, and it,
I mean, I was thinking of doing the same kind of thing.
This
They
was
just
the
bumped it
over,
up by 30.
this was the overpayment that we processed for our telephone system, so it's not an ongoing savings, it's just a credit in the amount of $1,128.
Where's
So-
that on tip page?
7223
on page 50.
Page 50.
Well,
50 slide.
So next month, we'll see, over the next 2 months, I guess, or 3 months, it'll be basically a zero cost because we have a credit with the vendor for the overpayment. So it's a modest, it's not an ongoing cut in expenses, but it is a modest adjustment that we'll see pick up over the next
well,
quarter.
I appreciate
Yeah,
doing
that's right.
the smaller
That's
things.
no problem. With the blank side, back side of these pages.
Now, another bit of good news is that yesterday, we received our $500 grant for COVID supply reimbursement.
Okay.
So again, on page 50,
Every other page. is-
in the supply line 7235, which we recorded this income in the miscellaneous income section,
Okay.
but we did get a grant award for that.
That's all.
I've been so confused. Half number.
You only had half of it?
Yeah. The backside of all these pages.
Well, please consider that all the counties are having a hiring freeze and a salary freeze and a budget cutting efforts and allocating money in different ways. And when they see the budget, they just want to see the organization doing the same kind of things they're doing.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Understood.
Okay, so Terry, you're requesting that we recommend that adjustment, is that correct? Is that what you're saying? For this, for the broadband?
Well, we had this adjustment coming,
Okay.
so that's going to get more in line experience. So we just wanted to report back and update you the information that we have been
Okay, I thought you
providing,
were requesting something from the committee on that, that's just.
It's just-
Information.
positive information.
Yes, requirements.
When we present the financial statements to the board in November, we can put together a list of areas that we will be reducing expenditures to be able to bring the performance back in line.
Okay, I think we're gonna need that, and,
Yeah.
I'm sort of lost, because I know I looked at some of the stuff that I saw online, and now it's not here. So, in the paper version.
Now, on page 51, there's a graph. And we continue to meet the target for the fund balance. On the salaries to monthly actual versus monthly budget, we continue to fall under budget in our salary line item.
So you keep it
So as I said, we'll include the motion, we'll include as an agenda item on the November 12th board meeting, inclusion of the financial statements through September 30th, and can include that with a recommendation from the committee or not. If you'd like us to move, obviously, I think the intention would be to move the item forward to the November 12th board meeting.
Remember Patricia's online.
Mhm.
Patricia,
I'll
can you
speak up.
hear
I'm
this?
sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
Ms. Page?
She's still on, Diane?
I can still see her over here.
Okay.
She's not on?
Is she muted?
Oh, we don't have, I can't say it because we have to stop the meeting if we don't have that magic number.
Yeah,
Patricia?
so we can move the item forward to the agenda without a recommendation since you don't have a
We can
quorum
still
to vote.
talk.
But, I mean, you know, we can, it'll be on the agenda anyway for November 12th. We can do that way. Without a formal act from the committee.
Request for budget amendments.
We have a list of budget amendments in front of you, and we are requesting an action on just the first two agenda items.
Where are they?
It's on page 52.
Mr. Peterson doesn't have a complete packet. We said that a number of times. Do we have another copy that we can give to
I'll
him?
go for another copy.
Thank you.
Yeah, everything, I have all the out pages.
This is,
Okay.
We can share. Yeah.
Okay, so for the analysis of impediments for fair housing, the vendor is not going to receive more than $100,950. That means that they can receive up to that amount. So the amount could come in less, but not greater than $100,950. So we are requesting in a budget amendment not to exceed $96,817. And that amount will also include the share of the fees that PRVA is to receive for managing this project. Again, the agency won't receive more money on the contract. If the contract comes in less from the vendor, PRVA is not going to receive the residual for those fees. So we're requesting a
So is this a
revenue,
lump sum price we're guaranteeing these people to
it's
complete the
multi-year,
job?
it's multi-year.
But we have to do the job either we run out.
We just manage it, we're just managing it, and we have a contract with this vendor, but we're just managing administratively between all 6 jurisdictions. We do the billing and the collection of the money on the project.
So this is just a time and materials project.
Right, we have an in-house manager, Mark Bittner put the RFP together, and he's worked with Update, keeping all of the regional cooperation documents in place.
I guess my question, I guess is coming from my field is, we're saying $96,817. If this project doesn't get completed on time, who's on the hook for funds to go above that?
The consultant, the contract is a deliverable not to exceed contract. And so if they fail to meet the deliverables within the budget, it is their responsibility to do that and will not get paid more.
But we don't, so we put working on it.
That's right. That's right.
Use the funds.
The budget resolution is to address, the project was originally scheduled to be completed in August of this year. So the original budget in this fiscal year was, I think of $5,000 in this fiscal year budget, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
But because of the pandemic, the project has been delayed. And so it's been extended, all the agreements have been extended through March 31 of 2021. And so we're just making the revisions in the budget to be able to account for that project delay and the carryover of the project into this fiscal year, well into this fiscal year.
Okay, so the change is because the funding is 125,000. Staff here is gonna get 2,450, and the remainder, what are the consultant fees? What is the consultant?
The
fee?
consultant fees in total are the 100,950, if I'm not mistaken, Terry, is that correct in the way I'm reading?
That's correct.
The document?
Not to exceed.
So our-
100,050.
Our administrative fee is relatively small. Most of the budget amendment is the inflow and the back outflow to the consultant, but we're just trying to
I'm just
get.
curious,
yeah.
what do these consultants do? That's
Yeah,
all.
they're doing the data analysis and community survey work for the analysis of impediments to fair housing. So you may recall this project has had an interesting set of twists and turns, but originally it was conceived of to be a cost-saving measure for the jurisdictions to do the project together, rather than the 6 communities each individually conducting a study.
Yeah.
In the time that we kicked this project off last November to this summer, the requirements of agencies that receive community development block grant funding have been lifted. So it was a requirement of the 6 localities to complete this project. That's since been repealed, but the localities elected to continue on with the project. And so we're continuing to manage it for them till the end.
Okay.
Tricia, you back?
I am, Mr. Peterson.
Okay, we're trying to figure out what we've got for, take any action or not.
You know, we need 4.
Yeah, we need 4. I think we have
We don't have, okay, so,
I was just curious, and then the other one, the community impact grant award. Just, what is that? Support capacity building and technical assistance. More representative.
We received an award.
We're
from-
on page 52, Patricia.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
We received a grant from the Community Foundation for Greater Richmond to support capacity building in our public outreach and engagement activities. So this is 100% pass-through grant. It will actually be paid to us up front. I think the deposit is pending, if not already, has occurred. So, and we'll be using the grant funds that are awarded and dispersed to us to fund consultant services for public engagement. And the Public Outreach and Engagement Committee is overseeing that project with staff.
Okay.
So that one's a straight in and out. It doesn't have an impact on the agency's bottom line.
Okay.
The other 2 revisions, I think Terry mentioned, she would like to withdraw for today because we have a little bit more work to do before those are finalized. Did I say that correctly?
You did. Okay.
It's just the first 2 revisions to the resolutions for budget amendment that would go before, that would be included on the agenda for November 12th.
Hazard mitigation.
you have a problem?
No.
Do you have a problem on this page?
No, I don't. I'm fine with that.
Okay, I guess you got 3 votes then.
Okay.
If that's, no, we don't have, that's right, we don't have.
Regional emergency.
We can't recommend it, we just pass it on through the whole.
So for your awareness, I think the documentation will just include the first 2 on the budget resolutions. And we'll bring the other 2 for the MPO and for the hazard mitigation plan back to you at your next committee meeting.
And the state Homeland Security grant, is that one?
You're saying those not, we're not.
Apologies. Yes, I apologize. That 5th one also will be for next time as well.
The 3 of them, okay.
Right?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. Next is benefits of purchasing a new grant management system.
I think actually, we wanted to just briefly tell you about the FY 2022 budget
This
before
is
we,
page 54.
before we get to that item.
No?
If we could go to the FY 2022 budget just for a moment. Terry and I have been reaching out to the directors of finance in the respective jurisdictions, just getting a sense of what we might expect for fiscal year 2022. We know each of the jurisdictions. It's not.
It's
So
just a
Terry, you can do it.
This is not in your.
All right.
Right.
Terry, you can do it. There you go.
So we have reached out to each locality to find out pretty much what the fiscal environment is like in regard to putting the fiscal year 22 operating budget together. And from what we have gathered, it looks like half of the jurisdictions did respond, and there's a consensus that you need to update the population, but hold steady with the 5-cent reduction that we had put out there for the fiscal year 21 budget. And there were notes that, we will be back to where we need to be in the next 2 years. Hopefully we'll be back there.
You only got half of the jurisdictions responded.
Right, these were our larger folks.
Typically, the requests for the city of Richmond and Henrico and Charles City are due sooner than the other communities. Typically, the Henrico application is due around Thanksgiving. So we wanted to talk with you all about that, and, in close with the guidance that we've gotten from the jurisdictions, I think the sense that we've gotten from those that responded is they would be appreciative if our requests were mindful of the challenges, and that we requested the 50 cents per capita instead of our usual 55 cents per capita for the member dues. I think the advice has been that the TPO assessment remain at 5 cents per capita. But we wanted to talk about that with you and get your
I have to
advice.
agree with it. I mean, we're all in this, like I said, this is a regional thing.
Yeah.
And if everybody's taking the hit, we all have to take it together.
That was
Yeah.
our thinking. So we were operating under the premise that we would work on applications with that reduction in mind.
And when the census numbers aren't in yet, so when they said change
Right.
population numbers, how we.
So our charter requires that our population figures be based on the Weldon Cooper estimates.
Yeah, I found that.
Yeah.
And you gotta get it from somebody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, and I know in particular, there's been some concerns in Henrico. So for the upcoming fiscal year FY 2022, we will use the 2019 population estimates that were released in July of this year. There's a lag, but those will be the most recent data points that we have. And so we submit that from a process standpoint, we submit that to the jurisdictions in the winter according to their timelines. I think most of the jurisdictions do kind of a validation process internally and will advise us if that population figure is fitting with what the locality believes. In Hanover, we make an adjustment. The Hanover population is reduced based on the Ashland population. So we do those things. And then by the time the budget process gets into full swing in the spring, those numbers are finalized and provided back to us of what was included actually in the budget proposal from the administration.
When's the new census data actually come
Oh, I think they haven't even.
It'll be probably 2021,
out? 2021.
probably. They
Yeah.
just closed it, I think. October was the last month for collection of the data.
Yeah, they haven't put it all in yet.
Vice Chairman Peterson.
I'm a vice chairman of what?
Okay, Mr. Peterson. I'm listening, and truly New Kent is appreciative of that effort. But my question is, Martha, have you and Terry looked at the effect of reducing it by 5 instead of 55? Because truly, if we do, yet again, New Kent is appreciative, but it has to be an understanding that with the lack of that amount of funding, Plan RVA has to indeed be not only good stewards, but better stewards of the funds that we have to work with. And so all of the little inconsistencies that I'm hearing on my end, we have to absolutely be on top of our game if we're going to do this.
And my understanding is we're not looking at another reduction, we're looking at maintaining the reduction we've already working with.
That's what I had, that was the feedback I had heard from
Yeah.
jurisdictions that
It was
that
very much
responded.
appreciated, the reduction of 5 cents per person, because we were all struggling, because of COVID and everything else, but you did that earlier,
This is not an additional.
No, this is keeping it at 50 cents per person in population
Per capita.
Yes.
and per capita, 50 cents per capita. It was 55 more than a year ago, right, or a year ago?
Last year.
Last year's was 55. So they're keeping the reduction.
That's
that-
correct.
that
We can do the calculation that tells in whole numbers, the fiscal impact. 5 cent reduction on the per capita adjusted for population is not a net decrease in total revenue. Because your populations are
is
increasing
Yeah.
with the 5 cent reduction. So it is, I hear you, Mrs. Page, and I hear what you're saying, that it is always the time, but now especially, to be on top of our game, and we will do that. But it is not a net decrease in funding to us. It is a reduction in the increase. If that
Sounds
makes
like federal budget.
I know. Because the region enjoys such a healthy growth rate, the 5 cents per capita is netted by that growth. But we can put the numbers together to see those side by side for you at the next meeting. I'll do that.
Okay.
That was all we had on that item.
All right.
So the next agenda item is the grant management system proposal. And as we were discussing at the opening of this meeting, we need to turn around our net losses and kind of table this item.
I mentioned that, I did not, I don't know what everybody else's response, but I do have a difficult time putting anything forward that would increase expenses or reduce revenues in either case, until we have it.
Right. Well, and,
Possibly not.
unless things break down or, it's total non-functioning, if you don't have something, but this appears to be, we
I
need
know
to
it's
cost
very relative, small, was it 14,000?
It's 13,700 if you pay for it in the first year, and then based on the number of hours that you're required to have, they said that they'll come in under the 80 hours.
But it's
But it,
relatively small, but it's still, part of the principle of the plan. I think
Right.
it's good. Good stewardship.
I understand.
We have to.
Is it a computer, it's a computer system, right? I mean,
it is,
Put things in, okay. Then that's, and
solve
what are you doing now, just by hand or doing
yes.
charts?
Just doing the analysis using Excel spreadsheets.
Okay.
So we're doing more journals rather than having the numbers allocated as correct as they could be.
I'm not sure this is like.
This quarter, the quarter we're in isn't really an opportune time for us to entertain this, but the third quarter would be a better time. Because right now, we're getting over audit, we're doing budget.
Trash can.
Right.
But this is, but I don't think we can recommend this to
Right.
the full board at this time.
Perhaps we could consider bringing it back at another quarter when things are looking better.
Well, we don't know how long this is gonna last. Like everything else, it's just.
And then the last item is in reference to the investment policy that we had brought forward several months ago. And there was a section of the conflict of interest paragraph that didn't read very clearly. And it came back as, we were directed to look at it and reword it. We did send the policy on to Eric Gregory for review.
Yeah.
And we concluded that we would just remove the paragraph.
Which paragraph?
It was a paragraph that was under the ethics and conflict of interest section.
Are you following this, Patricia?
Page 55.
Page
Yeah, I'm
55.
back. I'm back.
Page 55.
Page 55.
Yeah, the investment policy, there was some concern, and they did send it to the attorney to take a look at it. Go ahead.
And essentially, we followed his opinion to, he came back and said it was confusing. So we did remove the paragraph, and
Move the paragraph that we're looking at here.
That's
Right.
in conflict with the first paragraph?
there was a paragraph that was under the first paragraph on the bottom of page 55. And essentially, if you had investments that you were trading and these companies were our vendors, you had to come before management and disclose that information. Basically, you weren't to have inside information and use that inside information to trade with personal investments.
Well, isn't that the first paragraph here? That's
It's
what it
worded better and clearer.
So this is, the paragraph we see here under ethics and conflict of interest is a paragraph, a new paragraph that came in?
It was
taking away
there.
a confusing one and then putting this one in?
This one was there initially,
Okay.
but the following paragraph, which went into further detail, was just confusing.
Okay.
So we omitted that paragraph.
It required it required employees to disclose their financial interests in potential vendors of the Planning District Commission, and in seeking guidance from Mr. Gregory, the implementation of that would be very challenging, because the number of vendors that we actually have are few, and the obligation on our employees to disclose their financial interests in the event that those financial interests may have a cross section with our business dealings was limited. And so his advice was to remove that because so few of our staff members are in a position to make decisions about vendor selection.
That's what I'm saying, though. This
Okay,
says
there,
the
that's it.
investment program, you have more than 2 or 3 people that are involved in that at all?
No, and so we felt like it was
So
an inappropriate burden.
2 or 3 people,
Right.
the rest of the people are not involved with the program.
It seemed like an
Do whatever you want
inappropriate
with it.
burden to put on our staff to disclose their financial interests when they really have no role in the decision-making process.
All right, because as elected officials, we have to fill out all kind of financial forms for, each
So-
year.
So do you hear?
You do
We
hear.
had people put this organization on that a long time, years
Okay.
ago.
Right.
So,
That some of the,
all right,
we were okay as elected officials, but we had to do it anyway. But
Yeah,
some
we
of
had
the
to do it.
non-elected officials said they were going to do it.
okay.
Now, I did ask the question
Right.
to Mr. Gregory if he felt that we should post awarded RFPs out on the website,
Mhm.
and he didn't feel that that was really necessary. Because, I mean, otherwise, I'm not sure how our staff members would necessarily know who our vendors are.
Well, this.
I mean, if you're
this
not
is-
working in the program, you wouldn't really know. And we are so small, we do have so few vendors that we work with.
So Eric has recommended this change as is.
Yes.
And I think I have to trust him, just because I get it, but he says that's what we, I'm not having that paragraph here. As starters, but, okay. Anyways, it's
I'll call
okay.
the discussion.
All right.
Okay.
Okay,
What's the next step on this document, Terry? Do we want to keep it on the agenda for this committee to recommend to the board? Is it a board policy that you're, would that be the preferred next
This
step?
is certainly a policy, so I'm thinking it would need to go forward.
do we need to see the removed paragraph?
We can provide that to
We
you.
can provide that.
Is there, I guess, Terry, from a timing perspective, is it important to move this forward to the November meeting? Or is it something that can be on this agenda for the next meeting when the committee has a quorum and they see the text as it was previously drafted?
It can go ahead on the audit committee agenda for next month, so you can see the text.
Okay, that's fine.
Mhm.
Whenever we discuss it at the full board meeting, have the attorney needs to be there to just explain it.
Okay.
I understand what you're doing, I just don't think the
Mhm.
original one said,
So, yeah,
you know. But I can
I
understand.
don't have a problem with going forward with this, we just can't recommend it.
Yeah. Okay. You want
It just have, I mean, it's going forward without a recommendation from this
to
committee.
do that? We could do that.
And also, we need that statement that they took out of it to be
That's-
accomplished.
Yes, what we're talking about, since we don't have it, we couldn't recommend that it was done. But we don't mind having it at the November meeting, and then the attorney can talk about it.
Yeah, have it in there with, red line strip.
Right,
So
yeah.
people can see.
It could be in red,
I'll
and
change.
then we'd say, we talked about this, but didn't see the original, and your attorney needs to mention what this is and tell us what happened.
And we didn't have a forum, so we couldn't.
And we didn't have a
recommend
quorum
it
anyway, so sure enough, yeah, at that point.
Okay,
If that's
Okay.
okay, it'll be at the meeting, but he'll have to talk about it. We aren't recommending it, but it sounds like it's a good idea. I want to just see it, hear what the attorney says. Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, all right. Okay? You okay?
Yep.
That's it, right?
I think that's it.
That's all the items.
I'll keep those.
Thank you.
I would just make an adjournment meeting that doesn't have forum, can't.
Well, no, you
We just have to quit.
No, you're not